Hi, I'm Kesenya and welcome to Guiding Star Astrology. I'm here in the glorious southern Riverina of New South Wales at a beautiful organic winery and beef farm, and I've come here today to introduce you to a very special man. His name is Don Hearn and he is an energy healer. And I really have been so keen to introduce Don to my audience for quite some time now, finally found the opportunity to do so. Don practices a special form of energy healing. In fact, he's extremely gifted in this, and it's very fated capacity that he carries in his chart, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later when I introduce you. But astrology itself, it is a form of energy, and working with the energies of the planets and the energies of the universe. Those who know this old Hermetic saying, as above, so below. As the energies play out above, so they play out below in the lives of human beings on the planet. So we're working with energy as astrology, and it's also an interpretation of the energetic language of the heavens, or the language of the gods as such. Reiki is also similar to this. Reiki, or energy healing, Don's work is as an energy practitioner, so it's as much about working with energies as any sort of defined term like Reiki. And Reiki is similar to astrology in that it's energy work. It's working with energies. Now the difference comes in what the outcome is of both these tools for our growth, for our empowerment, for our understanding of life and our self-knowledge. And indeed that's what astrology does. It gives you self-knowledge, as the great philosopher Socrates said. One of the biggest goals for a man or a woman is to know thyself. And so astrology gives us the tools to do that through interpreting the language of the heavens, the language of the divine, to understand how it affects us energetically and know ourselves. Reiki, or energy healing on the other hand, is much more correlated to healing past life wounds and issues, karmic issues, things that weigh us down in life, emotional problems, emotional difficulties. So that is where Reiki can really complement working with astrology. Astrology will help you know yourself. Reiki can also assist in helping you to heal. So come with me now as we meet and engage with Don, my fabulous friend who's a glorious energy healer here in the beautiful Riverina of southern New South Wales. Come on. So Don, thanks so much for having us up here to the farm with you and Joe today to learn more about what you do as a healing practitioner. Now, as I mentioned in my intro, which you probably didn't hear, Don, but you'll hear it eventually on the video. But as I mentioned, astrology, which is what I practice, is working with the energies of the universe, and it's the old adage, as above, what happens in the heavens is reflected in the lives of the collective on the earth below, and also in the individual hearts and minds of people as well. So that's how astrology, in a very brief nutshell, works with energies. And in astrology, we also provide remedies and solutions for how to work with these energies to the best of our advantage as individuals. What are some solutions we can find through astrological charts, and what are some ways to go forward and get the best out of the particular energies in our lives. But you also practice an energy healing technique that we'll talk about in a minute. But first, let's start by exploring, if you'd like to tell us what you do here on your farm in the Riverina of New South Wales.
So our farm is called Rest Down, and together with my wife Jo, we run a certified organic farm, which is 1,000 acres in southern New South Wales in Australia, and we run organic cattle, and we have a vineyard and a winery, and also on our farm we have a big wetland area and a walking trail which has lots of different Aboriginal cultural heritage there, as well as lots of information about the landscape.
You're very connected to the land then, because as a farmer you work very closely with the environment and very hands-on with the land, and also connected to the traditions of your property and this part of Australia as well.
We're very fortunate. My family never really cleared a lot of the land. They always tried to farm in partnership with nature, and so as a result there is lots of historical information here, both in the soil profile but also in the scar trees and the canoe trees and the stones and the middens, the hearths that the Aboriginal people used to cook on. That's certainly scattered throughout our farm, and it adds a greater level of information for me when I'm out in the paddocks farming, to know that there's been people that have been here for thousands of years and they have nurtured the landscape, and I've been able to harness that knowledge, and that helps me with what we do here as well.
So your farm is open for people to come and visit and, you know, have wine tastings or explore the different areas of your farm. Is that something people often like to do?
By all means, if people would like to come and visit our place, we're open by appointment, and we're quite happy just to down tools and take the time to show people around, and I can do a guided walk of our wetland area, and we can just sit down with people when they come and taste some wine and have some lunch, and yeah, we're quite happy just to share our knowledge on whether it's farming or organics or Aboriginal cultural heritage, or just being kind to each other, happy to sit down and talk about life in general.
So Don, you practice a version of healing. Some might call it Reiki, it might go by other names, or the variation based on who you are as a person. But would you like to tell us a little bit about what that is, just for viewers who aren't familiar with energy healing and how it works and what you do? Would you like to give us the lowdown?
So I first learnt Reiki about 20 years ago, and it is a way of introducing energy into parts of people's bodies, which then helps loosen up some of the blockages, emotional blockages which they are carrying. There are quite a few aspects to Reiki, and different people who call themselves Reiki practitioners will naturally be drawn towards a certain element. For some people it's more spiritual, for some it's grounded a bit more in quantum physics, being an energy-based thing. So basically you can access, with a bit of practice and training, you can access the energy which is all around us. And so you tap into that, and then by placing your hands upon a person or an animal, you can then generate energy or let it flow through your body, and that will go into the person where your hands are resting upon. That is the very basic understanding, I guess, of Reiki. As I said, it does have many different levels, and the more people do it, the more things that they learn. And I guess, like every thing in life, there are good accountants and bad accountants, and good used car salesmen and bad used car salesmen, and good Reiki practitioners and not so good ones. So yeah, I started with that, and then over the last 20 years I've actually developed my own style of healing, which, for definition purposes, a lot of people will say that it's Reiki or psychic surgery, but for me I just heal people. So I place my hands upon someone's body if they are physically here, and then the person's body basically tells me stories. It tells me where they are angry, what they're angry about in a lot of cases, sadness, frustrated, all those things. So my style of healing, I guess, really doesn't have a label. I'm very hard to pigeonhole and stereotype, and so people go, oh, he's one of those, or he does that. And so when I'm working on someone, and it could be through a distance healing as well, I actually can see inside a person's mind body, which we'll discuss later, where they are hanging on to specific trauma that has happened throughout their lives. And depending on the length of time that trauma has been there, I will see that area, things within that area, as black forms. So they can sometimes take the forms of snakes or spiders. If something has been there for a long time, and someone, particularly in the angry part of their body, they have been angry, fiercely angry for a very long time with this particular issue. And it basically gets the negative matter, the black matter, gets condensed down to a hard rock. And so I actually locate those rocks or spiders or snakes inside a person's body, feed energy into that area to loosen them up, and then working subconsciously with the person. Then there's a counselling process which goes on, and a reassurance process, and which again the psychology major has given me those tools. Then over a period of a few weeks, then I actually remove those black things which are inside people, and they are the figures of which represent the person's trauma.
Fantastic. And I've got to ask, so do you work from mostly a spiritual point of view or a quantum physics point of view?
That is a very good question. And the answer probably is both.
Cool.
I think that obviously what I do, I have help in doing, and I am very, very fortunate that I have some wonderful helpers, and they take different shapes and forms, but I would not be able to do what I do without them. But similarly, I find they need me to be able to do, certainly set the intention and to provide the physical body through which they can work and which I can also work, and it is usually myself who is driving the operation, for want of a better word, but we work together as a team.
So you're talking about spiritual helpers in this sense?
Yes? That's right, yes. But also there is the quantum physics approach as well, which is pure energy, and energy is emitted by every moving object in the world and by every living object in the world. And so we are surrounded by energy 24 hours a day, but we are actually made up of energy ourselves. By the time you look down inside our bodies, inside our muscles, and smaller again, you get to cells, inside the cells, you get to the atoms, inside the atoms, you basically find that there are a few different tiny things whizzing round and round an atom, but an atom is actually made up of space, which is full of energy in itself, and those things that whiz round, the quarks and the protons and neutrons, when you look inside them, they are actually pure balls of energy as well. So while for some people it takes a bit to get the head around distance healing and the way it works, but when you actually look at it from a purely scientific quantum physics aspect, then it can all be explained fairly easily. So heat is energy, and often when I'm working on someone, they'll feel a lot of heat coming out of my hands. Heat, similar from the sun. The heat comes from the sun, but it is actually pure energy that the sun is giving off. It is just in the lowest form of energy that heat occurs.
Now, because I am an astrologer, I want to share with people what I saw in Don's chart when I did a reading for him many years ago, actually when I was just starting out actually, and I was really impressed by or moved by what I saw in the chart, which was that you have Neptune as a singleton. Those who are into astrology will know what this would mean. That Neptune as a singleton in the 6th house of healing, and when I say singleton, it's the only planet in your hemisphere of fate. So very much you are fated and called essentially to be a healer. And you know, we've discussed this many times, but you know, how did that astrological reading and the discovery that, hey, this is actually part of my fated calling in life, it's part of my destiny, is what I'm here to do, and you could see it manifesting in reality for you as well at the time, but you know, that confirmation that came through the astrology reading, how did that help you along your path, along your journey towards being a healer?
What I have learned throughout my healing history hasn't all come at once. There's been anyone that learns anything has to come through experience, and I guess I had been healing for a period of years before Kesenya did the chart for me, and I guess having then seen the evidence in the chart, that really I just had the one thing that I was destined to do in this lifetime, and everything else was a choice, and it just happened to be a healer. It kind of, in some ways, it gave me, I guess, the little push in the back just to say, no, actually this is okay, this is what you're supposed to be doing. And I think at different times, as we all know when we look back over our lives, there's often one thing or one person or one incident that just comes along and helps shape your next 10 years or 20 years or perhaps the rest of your life. And so having a reading that was just so applicable for me and just made everything that I'd been feeling and wanting to do and trying to, I guess, get the confidence up to know it was okay to do, all of a sudden seeing it in one of Kesenya's readings, it just meant that, okay, game on, now it's right to go, and let's run with it and see what happens.
Terrific. That's great. I love hearing that sort of feedback. And so, as I said, you know, you were very much fated to become a healer, and we'll talk about what type of healing you do in a minute, but how did you come to discover that you had a special divinely inspired gift to be a healer?
I guess if you talk to a few people who claim to be a healer or whatnot, and often they will say, I was born this way or whatever. And I guess possibly to a certain extent, but I grew up in a very conservative rural area where anything remotely hippie was frowned upon. And so I never knew that such a thing as a healer existed. I always had a probably more overly caring personality when it came to animals or other people, which meant that I didn't particularly always fit in with what was going on in the teenage years, which can be very hard at the best of times, no matter what location you live in or what type of person you are. Teenage years can always be a bit tough. So it probably actually didn't really kick into gear until about 20 years ago, and a friend of ours was going through some very bad health problems at the time, and which Western medicine approaches were really not doing anything to help. And then one of my brothers suggested, oh, well, why don't you go and learn Reiki? And I just thought, great, what's Reiki? Because my friend had been going through a series of operations, and it was a way that I could ease her pain in theory with only a very light touch of hands for those who are unfamiliar with the practice. And so I went and did that, and then after a few years of practicing that, I just felt there were some aspects of it which came very naturally to me, and other parts of it which just I was not naturally drawn to. So I started looking at different other methods, and then just experimenting with my own style and trying different things. And then, so yes, at the end of the 20 years now, I've probably evolved into a style which is probably easy to describe, that it's similar to Reiki, but it is actually still a little bit different on top of that. And now I find I'm fortunate to be able to help people and animals.
Wow, working with animals, that's really beautiful and really special. Actually, I didn't know you did that too. Don, I'm curious to know, when you, coming from a very conservative farming background, and we both sort of come from the same area of Australia, and coming from the conservative environment that we were raised in, you know, did it shock you when you discovered that you had this ability to heal people and help people in various ways? Was that strange for you or shocking to you?
It was pretty crazy. I think when I first started feeling energy flowing through my body, there was no one here that I could talk to about it, and this was pre-internet days, and so there was no Googling that I could do, and so it was a matter of just trial and error and practicing and see what would happen if I did a certain thing, and it was pretty probably pretty scary in a couple of instances that I can remember, and where you're not quite sure what is going on. But looking back at that, it was all part of an awakening type situation, and yeah, there was probably someone who was steering the boat. I just didn't realise that the boat had left the shore at that stage. But yeah, it meant all of a sudden that all the things that I thought, well, maybe that I'm a little bit different from the other interests of society, then, well, maybe there's a reason for this. Maybe this is something that I can look into, and if it helps take away people's pain, then it is definitely something that I wanted to look into, if I could help people. And it just then set me on the path to where I am now, which means that I can do a lot more for a lot more people.
Mm. So you actually studied psychology as well. Do you think that you were always kind of veering in that direction of wanting to help people, and do you use things like what you studied in psychology with how you practice as a healer, energy healer?
I think studying psychology at university was probably the most concrete thing that I could do that was approximated to healing, because again, healing at that time wasn't definitely something I knew about or was a profession by any means. But having that psychology base now does help me when I'm talking to the people that I'm helping, just to explain a few things to those people in a way that they can actually then realise what they're going through in their life, why that is happening, and I can shed some light on it from a psychology point of view. And so when, say for a distance healing, I usually recommend that we talk for about, say, 20 minutes via Skype or Zoom, and then we can just talk through a few things, and then I send the healing for about 1 hour after that, and then I send a follow-up email. And so there's always this conversation going on, and so it's not just a healing type thing and see you next week. It's people, a lot of the things that people are struggling with are emotional things, and it's as much a knowledge component as a healing component. When people can actually understand why they are reacting the way that they are reacting to certain situations, and then coupled with that is the information that I give them from what they are holding inside and what they're carrying inside, all of a sudden their life makes a bit more sense. So without that psychology grounding as well, I think, I would not be as good a healer. And similar, it's why I'm a farmer. I am a better healer because I'm a farmer. And I'm probably a better farmer because I am a healer as well. So they're both in balance, and they both keep me grounded, and very beneficial working together.
That is truly beautiful. And you mentioned doing distance healing, and I know that you also practice from your residence as well in person. But do you draw from the land? And we mentioned before about the ancient cultures that have been present on this land. Are you able to draw from the energy of the land through your practice in offering distance healing and healing in presence with people, because you've got this connection to like a very ancient culture and a very ancient land? You feel that helps with what you do?
I think being surrounded by 1,000 acres of certified organic landscape, which is rich in Aboriginal culture and energy and history, and there are spirits here from the old people as well as animal spirits on our farm, and so all that creates a huge source of energy that I can tap into, which I'm very fortunate that I can do that and use that as a healing energy. But I'm also fortunate that I've done a lot of travelling in my life, and I've been to many other countries and met people and spirits from other countries and other cultures, and they have been very generous in giving me some wisdom and some gifts, some healing gifts, which I also use. So I draw on a lot of different sources of inspiration and cultural references, when I'm working with people. And yeah, it's been a great journey for me, and it's still only just beginning. And but yeah, I'm fortunate that I can draw on a lot of help now, whether it's natural or man-made or spiritual.
Very exciting. So I'm really curious on behalf of my viewers to ask, you know, who is your type of healing good for? What kind of situations can you assist people with?
So the majority of people I work with are people that have suffered sexual abuse, emotional abuse or physical abuse, and that could have occurred at any different part of their life at all, whether they are a young child or a teenager or in their 20s or middle age. And I just find that over the last 20 years I've been able to work out that people hold frustration or anger or sadness in exactly the same locations in their bodies, regardless of culture or experiences. And so the people who do suffer from or have suffered from a lot of either sexual or emotional or physical abuse, they are hanging on to that trauma is still inside their body. Our subconscious is a wonderful self-defense, self-survival mechanism, and so when you have a negative experience, you go through it and you suffer from it, and then your subconscious actually takes a good chunk of it and deposits it in the same place in your body. So it knows where it can store anger and where it can store frustration and sadness, etc. So what happens over a period of time is every time we get angry, for example, then our subconscious goes, oh, okay, I know somewhere where I can store that anger, and so that goes in, basically it's like a bucket. For those people who are familiar with chakras and things like that, it works very much in those locations. So our anger bucket slowly gets filled up, and by the time we get to our 30s and 40s, it gets pretty full, and so we try harder and harder to keep the lid on our angry bucket, and that's why people suddenly get very angry for very little reason and will take it out on someone else or something else, or need to start self-medicating a bit more to try and control the fact that there's all this anger that is trying to come out and bridge from the subconscious into the conscious. And so what I do is to, over a period of a few weeks, I very gently lift the lid off the bucket, and I can start removing that anger and that trauma and that sadness from inside people's bodies. And then, yeah, eventually when there's no traumas left inside, then the person's own body, their own lymphatic system and blood flow and energy flow starts flowing back through that area that was blocked, the bucket that was blocked, and the person fixes themselves.
Brilliant. And I've had many a session with you, Don, and I can vouch for that happening. Every time I've had a session with you, within a matter of days in most cases, but certainly within a week, something shifts in me, but also in my outer circumstances. I find that's really very significant to sort of push me forward to perhaps my destiny or what I'm doing with my life, or to heal or something like that. So I've certainly noticed a correlation with the energy work that you do and what is unfolding in my life at the time, which is such a blessing, or it has been for me in this case. So Don, if some of my viewers wanted to work with you, how would they go about doing that? Do you prefer to work with people one-on-one in presence, like in Australia, or is there another means that people can contact you to arrange healing?
Yeah, so the best way for people to receive a healing is definitely if they live in Australia close by, they can come here, no problems whatsoever. But because there is also this distance healing component, it means that I can actually help people all around the world. So it has been something that I've been working with and working on for a long time, and so it is actually as effectual as if you had been here in our place, and I have my hands on you here. So and definitely, and a lot of this, the energy and the healing flows through me. but it is also something that I am in control of. So there's no reason to worry at all. So for the distance healing component, getting back to say if you've suffered some trauma and you're still carrying it in your body, most people are familiar with the mind, body, spirit trilogy, and the body we know, the physical body. The spirit is a big part of us which is unchanging and is pure consciousness, and that goes from one lifetime to the next. And the mind is the bridge between the two, and the mind is where all our senses, our sense of taste and smell and hearing, is where we interpret the experiences that we have throughout our life. And so that is where the subconscious lives. And so the subconscious again takes the experience and stores it away. So our mind is actually in every cell of our body. It is not just in our heads, which a lot of people would put it in. So if our mind exists in every cell of our body, there is actually a second body, a mind body as well as a physical body. So through the distance healing side of things, I'm actually working with your mind body, which is where your buckets are and where you are carrying a lot of the trauma. And so people just contact me through my email address, and then I will get back to them as soon as I can. It may take a few days, but I endeavour to get back to everyone as soon as I can. And then we organise a time where we can Skype, and then a distance healing session follows immediately after the Skype usually, and then the process begins. And usually by about the third or fourth session, most people have let go of or have let me remove a lot of the initial heavy trauma which has been troubling them, and then we have a break for a few weeks and let things settle down, and then we can come back and go again if people want to. It's completely up to them. I'm not going to keep hounding you about a next session at all. We just play it by ear because everybody's situation is different, and two people can have pretty much the same trauma and react completely different. So there are no hard, fast rules to this at all.
So you mentioned then, Don, about people allowing you to remove certain things from their psyche or their subconscious and so forth. That brings to mind elements of trust and the necessity of trust in a circumstance such as this. Certainly, as an astrologer myself, I find trust in another, my clients trusting me with their personal information and their energy and their chart and the interpretation of their chart is very, very important with what I do. And people generally come to my practice based on a feeling of resonance with who I am and the way I work and the way I see things. They very much trust me. And so I'm curious, this is a big component. I'm assuming this is a big component of what you provide as well, and the necessity for people to really resonate with you and trust your energy is very important in the work that you do as well, for people to feel comfortable and at home with you working at a very deep level with them. Would that be right?
Trust is everything. And so when people send me an email or talk to me on Skype, and I completely understand that recounting a traumatic experience is not easy. And I want people to know that anything they tell me is treated in the strictest of confidence. And I long ago learnt not to judge people. And so whatever anybody tells me, that is their story. It is not up to me to tell them if they are right or wrong. It is a way for them to explain why they're carrying the things they're carrying. And if it takes half a dozen of Skyping sessions or many emails in order for that person to feel comfortable enough to start telling me their story, then that's fine. There is no timeline for this at all. Just whenever people are comfortable in opening up, then that's fine for me as well. I'm not, as I said, I'm not going to be hounding people saying that they should sign up. I will just send an email to say, how about a Skype session on this particular date? If that's not going to work, well then we'll work something else out. But yeah, we need to trust each other, I fully understand that, and I try to be as humble as I can, because I find that's just a better way to live. And most people think or tell me that I'm fairly unthreatening. So
sometimes
I much would prefer. It's much easier to work with people than just try and dictate how things should be.
Cool. Beautiful. Well, Don, I'm sure there'll be many of my viewers who are drawn to your lovely energy, humble energy. So I just want to say a massive big thank you for sharing your time with us all today. And if people want to get in touch with Don, then there's an email address and links in the description below this video. But yeah, thanks Don for your time and for the gift actually that you offer the world with what you do. It is truly a blessing, and I'm so privileged to be able to share your work here on my channel. So thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you, Kesenya.
So thanks everyone for joining us here at my YouTube channel and with Guiding Star Astrology. I'm Kesenya, and feel free to like, share or subscribe this video if it really resonates with you and supports you, as I hope it does, in your journey of rising up.